Salve, salve, galerinha. Tudo bem, gente? Estamos aqui hoje para acompanhar o lançamento, dois lançamentos em seguida do Falcon 9. Um da Spherex and Push, que é um telescópio, e outro da Starlink, gente. Estamos aqui hoje, gente, para acompanhar os dois lançamentos, como eu disse, as imagens da NASA. Pode ser que demore mais uma hora. Faltando já 49 minutos para o lançamento principal com o nome da Spherex. Vou já dar o comando aqui, gente, do ajude. Onde vai ter, gente, dois cutucados, gente. Se conseguir, gente. Se a gente conseguir, aí vai ter duas cutucadas em seguida, gente. Cutucada é quando você paga o estágio. Aí vamos ter dois pousos também, gente. Do Falcon 9. Fazer as imagens da SpaceX.
With Spherex and Punch. And today is actually SpaceX's first rideshare mission with NASA Launch Services. Yes. And our next one will be with the Tracers mission, which is scheduled for later this year.
Hey guys, take a look at that live look at the launch pad right there. Not many clouds overhead, so that's great. Again, the three of us are going to keep an eye on that weather and commentate on major milestones throughout today's launch. The next up, we're going to have the NASA Launch Manager poll to see if teams are going to start flying Falcon 9. Back to you, Raquel and Farah.
Thank you
so much, Megan, Nick, and Jesse. Farah, we have so much for tonight, including that weather.
Absolutely. We have lots of guests from both the Spherex and the missions that are going to
Não, porque olha aqui como que fica na câmera.
Exactly, like engineers from
Fica com essa coisa aqui em cima.
Help Spherex and Punch by keeping their view of Earth and space consistent every day. Punch principal investigator Craig DeForce will bring
Vamos ver aqui, dois lançamentos do Falcon 9 de Você já coloca aqui dois lançamentos ao
And don't forget the main attraction, the Falcon 9 launch of Spherex and Punch. The launch window opens at 09:57 p.m. Pacific time. And stay tuned to gear up for the launch of 2 missions. Now, Spherex is loaded with high-tech components to help it map our cosmos. So let's take a look at some of those specs right now. Spherex is about the size of a small car and weighs a little less than...
Gente, como que é essa missão da Spherex?
It will orbit Earth in a way that keeps the telescope pointed away from our
Daqui a pouco, gente, depois desse lançamento, aí eu vou, gente, colocar as imagens da Space Flight Mode, gente. A Space Flight Mode.
The all-sky map will have 102 different color bands, each a different wavelength of light. This far exceeds the color resolution of previous all-sky maps. Spherex will observe over 450 million galaxies with its wide-field telescope. This map will help scientists better understand what happened within the first fractions of a second after the Big Bang. It will also shed new light on how galaxies form and evolve, and where water and ice and other building blocks of life come from. And Farah, we have people from all over the world watching today's launch, and they are sending in questions. So why don't we get to a few right now? Let's do it. Coming up, we have Universal Gibson on Instagram who wants to know, how far away in time will Spherex be able to observe?
So Spherex is creating a 3D map of the universe that's going to help us understand what happened in the first, and wait for it, trillionth of a billionth of a second after the Big Bang. So it's really the very beginning of our...
Uma pergunta, gente, como que será que a SpaceX vai conseguir transmitir duas lives? Pode ser que é lançado esse foguete, esse Falcon 9, e depois é lançado o Falcon 9. Pode ser que seja isso. Aí eles terminam a live do Falcon 9 que foi lançado, aí eles começam uma outra live.
understand what happened at the very beginning of the universe. But one of the things also
É
is that we're
certo.
taking
Tomara que não dê scrub da Starlink.
about how we
Se
have
der scrub de...
control our instruments so that we can be really
Mas tomara que não dê
sensitive
scrub
to
de...
photons
Scrub.
coming, to us in our detectors.
É que pode falar de qualquer jeito.
We
Scrub
will
de
have more
scrub.
videos coming using the NASA hashtag.
Pode falar de
We
qualquer
answer
jeito.
questions a little later on in the
Sim.
podcast as well.
Scrub ou scrub de...
On the launch countdown with
Pode falar de
in
qualquer
Austin,
jeito.
California.
Great. Thanks, Raquel. We are just about a minute away from NASA pulling its teams to make sure that we're ready to start loading propellants on Falcon 9.
Yeah, and it's the NASA launch manager, Dr. Denton Gibson. He's the one who's going to be leading the poll. We'll soon hear his voice here. You know, again, weather.
Dentro demais da SpaceX.
But 20 minutes ago, we got that weather briefing. Mick, who else are we going to hear reporting out to Dr. Gibson?
Yeah, so NLM will be checking with the teams from the NASA side to make sure that the rocket and spacecraft look good for launch. He'll be checking with engineering, mission management, safety mission assurance, the spacecraft, of course, and our program to make sure that everybody's good to proceed into propellant loading on the Falcon 9. So we'll get ready for that poll here in about 20 seconds, and we'll hear the NLM poll that team to make sure that we can get into propellant loading.
Again, a beautiful shot of the launch pad at Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Gente, já faltando 43 minutos e 2 segundos para o lançamento do Falcon. Será que vai... Oi? Você vai fazer live? Isso aqui é uma enquete, quer dizer, é como que é hoje duas lives duplas. Uma live em dupla, que é da SpaceX com outro. Então, bora criar uma enquetezinha, gente, né? Uma enquete, por que não uma enquete? Uma enquete aqui no chat. Você cria uma enquete aqui.
A look at the clock, 42 minutes, 8 seconds from liftoff.
The link margin analysis, and we do have the backup station.
That's a good copy. And backup station
Vai dar.
NASA team, this is NLM and NLMN, and I'm going to conduct the propellant load and launch readiness poll, starting with NASA's VE.
E uma enquete já, gente. Uma enquetezinha aí no chat. Acho que depois desse... Hoje não vai dar mais à tarde, gente. Eu acho que eu vou... gente, que vou pegar a thumb da live da Crew 10. Live da Crew 10 e colocar como... Só uma câmera exclusiva. Meu? Nossa, bagulho, tem uma câmera exclusiva. Meu? No começo da live da NASA, tava bem claro que agora tá escurecendo. Tava bem claro. Faltando 40 minutos e 28 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Acho que vai dar uma hora de live, gente. Uma hora de live, com certeza. Só uma hora de live, gente. Eu acho.
Ready to launch. The range is green. All great callouts. Again, with that live look of the pad, we are targeting a T0 of 8,
complete, and we
10,
go
12.
propellant loading. For non-urgent conditions, no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the auto sequence. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count.
Vamos vai esse momento dele.
Be hands-off, proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus abort the launch auto, operator shall call hold auto sequence. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operator shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately.
No hold. Acho que é só quando se tiver algum erro aí capa do
Continue with
lá,
the,
vamos falar mais.
loading propellant into the Falcon 9.
Thank you so much, Megan, Mick, and Jesse. Spherex is set to join NASA's fleet of space telescopes. It will complement the work of more targeted missions by providing a big picture view of the universe. Here to tell us more is Jamie Bach, the principal investigator. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie.
Exciting to be here.
You know,
Só
Spherex
por
is
causa
designed
que eu
to tackle some
coloquei,
pretty big
só por
cosmic
causa que eu
questions.
esqueci de
What are some
colocar
of the
ali
biggest mysteries
Foguete
scientists hope to
se ia
answer?
dar
Well,
hold,
Spherex, we're using a new
ele falou com
capability. We're
tomar que não
mapping the
dê
entire sky
hold
and
não,
appending to
gente.
near-infrared colors. And with that new capability,
Tomar que não,
that lets us
tomar que não
address
dê
some really
hold não,
fundamental, exciting
gente.
questions. So the first one is, where's the water? The Earth's oceans are thought to have originated from water in interstellar space in the form of ice. And so Spherex is going to map the abundance of water and other organic ices along millions of lines of sight over our galaxy in a way that's never been done before.
No, Jamie.
We're also going to measure the total glow produced by galaxies, and that glow traces all the light made by galaxies over cosmic time from their formation through their evolution. And then finally, we're going to make a giant 3D map of distant galaxies using their positions and distances. And that map, those galaxies trace out structures set up by the Big Bang itself. And so we can use that map to learn more about how the universe began.
That reminds me of another question that we get all the time from viewers. What is the difference between space telescopes like James Webb and Spherex?
Well, so imagine you're at Everest Base Camp, and if you have a telephoto lens, like a big telescope like JWST, you can zoom in and see mountaineers on the very summit of the mountain. But if you have Spherex, it's like the pano mode on your iPhone. And so with Spherex, you get a view of the whole Himalayan range. So those are very different and very complementary ways of looking at the universe.
And Jamie, this is really your baby. I mean, every time we make a technical decision, we always ask ourselves, how do we get Jamie his science? We're here today. How are you feeling?
It really is like having a kid. And Spherex was a baby at one point, but it's grown up and it's ready to walk out the door now and make a name for itself. It's both, you know, tense, emotional, and exciting all at the same time.
Fantastic. And where will you be watching launch today?
Oh, I'm going to go outside and look at it in person as it takes off the pad. Totally.
Great. We did goodbye one last time.
Thank you so much for joining us today,
my
Jamie.
Pleasure.
We really appreciate you taking the time. So let's head back to the team at Hawthorne.
Thanks, Raquel. Let's take a moment to meet today's vehicle, which is on the pad right there on your screen. Falcon 9 is a two-stage rocket. It is the first and currently the only orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. Starting at the top of the vehicle is the payload fairing, a protective shell that encases the payloads being sent to space today. Now, made up of two halves, the fairing will separate from the vehicle once Falcon 9 has climbed out of Earth's dense lower atmosphere. Today's fairing halves are brand new and will be flying for the first time.
O primeiro estágio, esse daqui dessa parte de cima, o segundo estágio aqui, do Firecream, que é onde que está a coisa, onde está a carga. Onde está a carga e é a parte aqui de cima. O segundo estágio é esse daqui, e aqui essa parte toda resto é o
90,000 pounds of thrust at sea
que não é
level,
gostado também, sabe, dente.
which gives Falcon 9 a
E ainda não
1.7
teve
million pounds
food,
of thrust during liftoff.
então
Falcon 9 first stage is also
só foi
equipped with
só
four
um
landing
aviso
legs that
se
deploy to allow for a vertical landing
foi
on
só um
a
aviso
drone
quando
ship
se
or
tiver
launch pad.
hold, aí
And the booster
eles
supporting
pegam
today's
só
mission
para
is flying for
comunicar
its third time
que
today,
é
having
hold.
previously supported NROL 126 and
Entendeu,
Transporter
gente?
12. After stage separation, the first stage will head back to Earth,
É demais,
targeting
gente.
a landing at Landing Zone 4 at Vandenberg. And we should have begun propellant loading. That begins at the T-minus 35-minute mark. So we're about 40 seconds into propellant loading.
All right, Jesse, you mentioned the booster coming back to landing zone 4. That's only about 1,400 feet from where the Falcon 9 will launch from.
Yeah, that is correct, Megan. Being able to launch and land from
Deixa eu
locations
dar
so
a
close
gente
to each
divulgar a
other
live
makes
aqui, gente,
reusability
com
significantly
água
easier.
pra
And
vocês
in order to
aqui.
do that, after stage separation, the booster has to flip immediately, fire its engines with a boost back burn to start
Deixa eu
heading
aproveitar e
the
ativar
opposite
uma coisa
direction,
aqui, gente.
that it will initially
Quando tá no
be
sistema
flying
hard,
at
eu sempre
17,500 miles
eu
per hour to make
sempre
its
esqueço de
way
ativar.
back towards land.
All right, so RP1 is now loading into the Falcon 9's first stage. So we've locked in that T0 for today, 8, 10, 12. We will see you back here in a few minutes when we begin loading propellant into the second stage. Over to you, Raquel and Farah.
Deixa eu só ativar.
Thank you so much. Riding along with Spherex is another mission
Deixa eu só
called Punch.
ativar.
It consists of 4 suitcase-sized satellites that weigh about 140 pounds each. They will focus on the sun's outer atmosphere, the corona, and how it generates the solar wind.
Não, não
The
está
spacecraft
ativado.
will also track coronal mass
O modo
ejections, which are
de
large
restrição
eruptions
de
of solar
7,
material
somente
that drive
circuitos
large
e
space weather events near
replay
Earth.
pro chat.
The 4 satellites will spread out around the Earth along the day-night line, which enables the constellation to remain in constant sunlight as it creates a continuous, complete view of the corona and solar wind.
Gente, a carga
3 of the Punch
3D.
satellites carry an identical wide-field imager. The 4th Punch
Telescópio,
satellite
eles são os
carries a compact
telescópios, com
coronagraph,
certeza.
which will study the sun's corona and surrounding star field. All 4
Igual
cameras
a
will be
empresa
synchronized in
que
flight
vão
so
dar.
that the science team can combine their images into a
Eu acho que não
90-degree
parece
field
qual
of view.
empresa que é que
Now,
deve
Punch will help scientists understand how the
Quando
sun's
se
energy
aparece, pode
and
ser que
particles
não.
travel through space and affect Earth. So let's take a closer look at how this is done.
PUNCH is an acronym. It stands for polarimeter to unify the
Olá,
corona and
gente.
heliosphere.
The corona is the outer atmosphere of the sun. It's the part that is no longer gravitationally bound to the sun and has so much energy that it flows outwards, filling our solar system and pushes against the interstellar medium, making a bubble, and that is the heliosphere. And this system of how the corona turns into the heliosphere is what PUNCH is trying to study.
So PUNCH is fundamentally 4 cameras that work together to make composite movies. We have a narrow field imager that views the space close to the sun, and then we have 3 separate wide field images, each of which is a large squarish field of view that looks way off to the side after 45
Não,
degrees
porque se eu
away from the
deixar
sun.
aqui,
That allows us to do something that no other mission has been able to do, which is routinely track coronal mass ejections, space storms, all the way across the solar system as they approach the Earth.
não, melhor eu
By
deixar como
better
estava assim.
understanding these storms and better understanding how they propagate on their way to the Earth, we'll be able to inform our partners on how to better forecast these events in the future. And that's really important for protecting our astronauts, our satellites, and our power grids.
Olá, gente.
Once we launch and start producing images,
E hoje, gente, também temos a da Starlink, gente. Também temos ainda nessa live da Starlink, gente. É o da Starlink. Deixa esse layout aqui. Deixa esse layout. Ou esse daqui.
To do tremendous science with PUNCH because it provides this global context of what is happening in the corona and what is happening throughout the inner solar system, so that we can connect details to the bigger picture.
You might say
Não.
PUNCH is the next chapter
Esse que já estava. Não.
as we bring imaging and
Não. Vou deixar esse daqui mesmo.
so that we can
Isso.
develop a coherent understanding of the entire system that starts
Faltam 30 minutos e 2 segundos para o lançamento do Falcon 9 SPHEREX Bounce.
To learn more about the punch mission,
Ah, não
just
sei
scan the
como
QR
que é,
code on
gente,
your
aqui.
screen or go to
Não sei como que é esse daqui, né?
science.nasa.gov/punch. And with us now is Peg Luke,
Leite QR
Deputy
Code
Director
da
of NASA's
negócio.
Heliophysics Division. Great to have you join us.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start with a punch question. Why are you interested in imaging the solar wind and the outer corona in 3D?
So we are interested in seeing how the charged particles that come from the sun
Deixa eu
make
botar
their
aqui.
way all the way throughout the solar system,
Fala
especially to
comigo.
Earth. As
Do por
those
favor.
particles come to Earth,
É o
they
que?
can
Um
cause
foguete sim, é um
aurora,
foguete
which are
sim.
beautiful, but they can
Rafael.
harm astronauts in space, they can harm satellite
É um foguete sim.
electronics, and they can
É o
disrupt
foguete
GPS
Falcon
signals.
9 de.
So
É o
by
Falcon
looking
9.
in
Falcon
3D,
9.
we can better
Famoso
predict
Falcon 9 da SpaceX.
exactly how that space weather is
Vai
going
levar
to
a
reach
carga.
the
Vai
wherever
levar a
we're
carga.
looking at the Earth or Mars or wherever we
SPHEREX.
are
Não sei
concerned
se
about
está
where people
aparecendo o
will be.
conteúdo
So
mal, mas
this really helps us
SPHEREX.
improve our
Punch,
predictions.
punch.
The weather prediction that we do here on Earth, but for
Acho que é isso
Yes, it
o
is.
nome.
so can you explain to
Mas
us
vai
how
levar
punch fits into the broader
2.
NASA portfolio?
Vai
So
levar 2.
punch is
Nessa
putting
live
our
vamos assistir os 2
heliophysics
lançamentos.
suite
Esse do
of
Falcon
fleet of
9,
satellites.
SPHEREX,
Heliophysics is the study of the sun, the solar wind,
Push
and
e
how
outro
it
da
affects the
Starlink,
entire
que vai ser ainda nessa live.
heliosphere, the entire solar
Live
system.
dupla.
So there are different satellites that look
Live
at
dupla.
the phenomena close to the sun, and different ones that study how the
Gente,
effects on Earth are done. And
já divulga a
this will
live, já
be
deixei um like,
trying
como
to
está
bridging a
escrito
gap
aqui,
that we currently don't have in
escrito
seeing
aqui
how those
embaixo. Já deixe o
solar
like.
eruptions actually travel, and we can see them up close at the sun, and we see what's happening once
Claro
they're
que
far
não dei
away,
nenhum
but we haven't been
scrub
able to
ou
track it
code,
the way punch
gente.
will be able to do.
Oh, very good.
Esse foguete.
You know, NASA
Desse
is
foguete
launching
do
two
Falcon 9 e
science
nem
missions at
do
once. Can you
Starlink que
explain
vai
how
ter
this is
hoje.
an efficient approach?
Já tá, já
So
tá, já taquei o
for
dedão
heliophysics is a
no
science that
like, no querido.
benefits
Valeu
from
aí.
multiple
Valeu.
spacecraft flying together, and so we've been
Tomara
flying
que não dê
multiple spacecraft
scrub
on the same
ou
launch vehicle for a long
code.
time. As rockets have gotten more capable, we are more able to fly different missions together, and so it's tremendous. It gives us
Faltam
an
27
ability
minutos e
to
14
maximize the
segundos
return on the investment in the
para o
launch vehicle, get
lançamento
more
do
science
Falcon
into space
9. Esse
for the
lançamento
same
está
investment,
previsto para
and
às
it's more
meia-noite e
complicated, but
10
it's
e tem
absolutely
outro
worth it.
que é da Starlink, às
Thank you
meia-noite e
so much for
48.
joining us
Thank you.
today.
Enjoy the launch.
Oh, yes.
Como que está o áudio, gente?
Now, let's go
Como
beyond
está
our
o áudio?
star and peer back in time. Spherex is going to investigate some of the biggest questions about the very beginning of our universe. To do that, it will study light so distant it has taken 10 billion years to reach Earth. Here's more on what we
Duas
hope to
pessoas
learn.
assistindo a live, gente. Olha, gente, a carga.
Spherex is NASA's
É
latest
telescópio.
mission in astrophysics. It's a small telescope, but it has this unique
Essa carga,
and
gente, é
powerful capability of
telescópio.
doing spectroscopy everywhere.
We are going to survey the entire celestial sphere and collect a data set that will help us answer 3 fundamental science questions.
It's going to tell us about the origin of the universe, the birth and formation history of galaxies, and the abundance of essential molecules such as water in the early stages of star and planet formation.
The great thing about Spherex is we will capture the entire sky 4 times in over 100 different colors of near infrared.
Se alguém tiver alguma dúvida na live, o áudio está bom. Se alguém tiver alguma dúvida na live sobre alguma coisa tipo de foguete ou o que é Scrub ou Gold, é só colocar aqui no chat, gente, comentar.
And this is really a
profound
idea, and we're very interested to test it. And so one way to do this is to look at how matter is distributed over the universe. We want to map hundreds of millions of galaxies in 3 dimensions. What Spherex does, in addition to mapping out all these galaxies, is we cover the whole sky. So we can measure these galaxies over the largest part of the range we can see, which is the entire sky. And we want to cover the full range of distances from today to as far back as we can see.
water molecules bounce around in interstellar space, and every once in a while they will impact a small dust grain. When a water molecule collides with one of these dust grains, it freezes on the surface. It doesn't leave the surface. And these ice-covered dust grains participate in the collapse to form regions where new planets are formed. Spherex, for the first time, will allow us to directly measure not just the location of these key ingredients, but the abundances of these key ingredients.
We expect to have spectra of order 500 million galaxies, hundreds of millions of stars.
We will really see anything that is observable in near infrared, and that's a lot of things.
And so we can expect some exciting and unusual discoveries that come from this. Spherex is a nice complement to future telescopes, such as the James Webb Space Telescope, with the fantastic spatial and spectral capabilities, and learn more about what's going on.
Now, Farah, what are you most excited about?
I think it's going to be turning that instrument on, getting those first pictures, and really it's going to be the twinkle in the scientists' eyes when they get that data and make those big discoveries.
Fantastic. And for more Spherex mission updates, check out the QR code on your screen or go to nasa.gov/Spherex. And joining us now is Spherex program scientist John Wisniewski. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. We are excited.
Absolutely. We have heard about the benefits of today's rideshare. So what does it take for our teams to launch these two science missions together?
Yeah, so we think about this very carefully when we're, seeing whether missions are appropriate to be ride shares. The first thing we think about is, do they need to go into the same orbit, into a similar orbit, right? That's kind of criteria number one. We also are looking at, what's the timeline for the development of both of the potential missions. You need them to be ready at the same time, right? Do they have compatible mass and size requirements as well, and also technical details like, is one mission going to contaminate another mission, so things like that. And so in the case of Spherex and Punch, they both had all these compatible criteria, and we're good rideshare partners, and we are really excited to be able to deliver two science missions, with one launch vehicle. It's a great, efficient way to launch two science programs at once.
For sure. And so astrophysics it's a really large field with a lot of existential questions. Can you talk to us a little bit about which piece of the puzzle Spherex is going to be answering?
Yeah, sure. So in NASA astrophysics, really our portfolio is answering three fundamental themes, right? One is, what is the physics of the cosmos? What are our cosmic origins? And then a really profound question of, are we alone? And it's really cool that Spherex is touching on all three of those themes in some small way. So that was the
Estamos aqui, gente. Deixa eu ativar o banner daqui.
That astronomers are going to be using for literally the next decades.
Tirei aqui o banner já.
But also questions we haven't even thought of yet.
That's fascinating. And what big takeaways will viewers at home potentially get from the discovery made by these missions?
Faltando
Yeah, so
21 minutos e 17 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, levando a carga Spherex Punch. Já vai completar, gente, o load, primeiro load.
The instant right after the Big Bang, and I think that's really inspiring. It's inspiring to me. I know it's inspiring to the science team.
John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Go Spherex.
Go Spherex. NASA has set its sights on deep space exploration, but before that,
Deixa já configurou mais vídeo aqui na live aqui.
NASA's latest science missions will serve multiple purposes, not only providing insight on how the universe and galaxies form, but also helping the agency's astronauts in their mission to explore the moon and beyond through the Artemis campaign. Spherex will scan the sky, creating a map of the Milky Way and hundreds of millions of stars and galaxies to search for water, carbon monoxide, and planets forming.
Tesla já completou o tanque de combustível já completou do primeiro estágio. Aí agora vai ser do segundo estágio.
Also launching with Spherex is Punch, consisting of 4 satellites that will continuously observe the solar wind like never before. The radiation of the solar wind threatens Earth's power grids and satellites, also the moon's surface, and astronauts and their spacecraft in orbit.
Deixa já,
Data
gente,
will help scientists improve space weather forecasting so that it's faster and more accurate. That information can lead to more optimal launch windows, adjust spacecraft trajectories to minimize exposure to extreme solar weather events, and design adjustments for spacecraft to better withstand coronal mass ejections. That's a look at your Artemis Moon Minute.
Já volto.
Scan the
Ok.
QR code on your screen to learn more about the upcoming Artemis 2 launch and what's planned for our Moon to Mars program.
Daqui a pouco dei tiro no lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, levando o foguete Falcon 9 da SpaceX. Vai levar a carga Spherex Palms.
Successfully landed on the moon, carrying 10 NASA science and technology instruments. They are the first commercial company to execute a successful soft landing on the moon. Farah, take a look at that beautiful video.
Such a cool video. I think I've seen it 10 times.
And just last
Não
week,
sei se eu disse esse quadrado ou se
achieved a historic feat,
vai
the
sair
southernmost lunar
quadrado aqui.
landing and surface operations
Está aqui,
ever.
não?
Although the IM-2 mission ended prematurely due to the lander's orientation, the data collected will provide invaluable insights into this challenging lunar region. And Farah, how about we answer some more of those Spherex questions coming in? All right. We have one actually that talks about the launch window and the times that are being heard. Can you explain what 810 and 809 mean?
Yes, I think we've talked about this a lot, right? So we are trying to target a particular orbit. And in order to do that, we need to launch at a specific time. And we have to launch between 8:09:57 and 8:10:27. So it's that 30-second window in which we can launch. So what we did is we looked at, okay, a few hours ago, we looked at, okay, is there any collision risk? There weren't. And so what the team did is they decided to launch right in the middle of that window. That's really the optimal time to get right on that orbit. And that's why you heard us say that we're launching at 8, 10, and 12 seconds precisely. And that's going to be our launch time today.
Fantastic. And
Esse
thank
daqui
you
vai deixar.
to Luke for
Esse
that
vamos
question
estar
on
deitinho,
Instagram,
mexer
on
nada.
on X actually. And we also have Rob V on YouTube who wants to know, how long will it take to map?
Ao todo, 17 minutos já foi carregado do segundo estágio, que eu nem vi o lajeto como você usado no Falcon 9. Já encheu já. Bem rápido que encheu.
Thank you so much, Farah. Keep those questions coming using the hashtag #AskNASA with Falcon 9. Second stage locks loading about to begin. As you just heard, let's send it back to Megan, Mick, and Jesse.
Olá, gente, os professores da NASA. Duas pessoas da NASA. Um campo superior. Não, do lado esquerdo, outro do lado direito. E da SpaceX no meio. Já estamos em lives há quase por 33 minutos e 54 segundos de live.
Stage 1, and we are just about to start loading liquid oxygen on stage 2 at the T-minus 16-minute mark, which we should hear a call out for that in a few seconds.
Again, a great view of the rocket on the pad there. And at the tip top, we told you
Gente, 15 minutos, faltando 15 minutos e 36 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Piloto apaga Spherex, gente. Spherex e Punch, não sei que é o nome.
Inside that payload fairing, we have Spherex, our primary mission, which is one spacecraft. Punch, which is made up of 4 spacecraft. So deployment tonight, we will see 5 spacecraft deploy into a sun-synchronous orbit.
Now, we were saying that the propellants are RP1 or rocket-grade kerosene and super cold liquid oxygen. You know, why those fuels and how do they launch a rocket?
Yeah, Megan. So RP1 is the fuel component. Liquid oxygen is our oxidizer, which we cool down to make it as dense as possible. Increasing the density enables us to load more of it into the vehicle. And with a fuel and an oxidizer, we still need an ignition source. So we use TTEB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, which combust when combined, lighting our fuel and oxidizer to create that thrust. It's a pretty efficient system that not only gets Spherex and Punch into space, but also allows the booster to fly back to Earth and land for another mission.
Yeah, and Spherex is going to scan our entire universe to gather data on billions of stars and galaxies, and then Punch. We'll study our sun's corona to better forecast when space weather will affect us on Earth. And Mick, again, you're with NASA's Launch Services Program, which determined that both those missions could fly together on this one launch.
Yeah, as we just heard in a previous interview, we looked at those mission requirements, we assessed the missions, found that both could be delivered to that sun-synchronous polar orbit that we want to get to.
Porque era para ser esse mês o lançamento da Blue Origin do Nibley, mas só que foi adiado, gente. Para março.
Yeah, again, headed to what's called a sun-synchronous polar orbit. And why does that work for both missions? Well, check out my interview with LSP engineers Philip Hargrove and Mark Emmons. Okay, Mark,
Faltando 3 minutos e 24 segundos, gente, para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, gente, da missão Spherex e de Punch. Vamos ter a cutucada, gente. Vamos ter cutucada, gente. Vamos ter a cutucada. Viu? Nem faz uma hora que a NASA começou a transmissão dele, já está a câmera lá de... Essa câmera é da onde? Deixa eu ver aqui. No Next Space Flight. De Califórnia, Vanderbilt, deixa da Spherex em Bush, vai na Califórnia, e da Starlink vai ser em Cabo Canaveral. Vai ser 2 na Flórida. Os 2 na Flórida, gente.
Do their celestial sky observations, always working on this backside of the orbit, the safe side. Punch, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. It wants to study the sun. It wants to see the solar wind, the solar weather emanating from the sun coming to Earth. So this is a perfect orbit for them as they go around, because they'll go ahead and get maximum viewing time of the sun.
You know, we've been talking about in the broadcast how Punch is actually made up of 4 satellites. Spherex is 1. So basically, you have 5 spacecraft that you're relatively, you know, near each other as it's going around the Earth. How do you make sure that
we do a couple things. First thing is Spherex is going to go ahead and separate away from the sun. Separate in this direction. After Spherex separates, Falcon's going to do a small thrusters just to lower by a couple kilometers, so they're not exactly the same orbit. And then the Punch spacecraft are going to separate in different directions. So the first 2 Punch spacecraft are going to separate equal and opposite along the velocity vector. The other 2 canted off that vector. So that puts them all in different directions, even Spherex in different directions, keeping them all safely moving apart from one another.
Because Spherex doesn't want to be affected by the sun, can't be affected by the sun. Were there special considerations on the ascent up?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's all about protecting the spacecraft and keeping the sun out of this top half. So what we're going to do is, normally we launch out of Vandenberg directly into the orbit plane, but instead we're going to launch east of the orbit plane we want to be in. That puts us on the dark side, or in the shadow, during those early phases of the mission. So as we then come out of shadow, we'll coast down to the South Pole, We'll circularize the orbit in the second burn and also do a plane change to put us in that sun-synchronous orbit plane we want to be in. So that
Isso,
keeps it safe for the spacecraft.
Guys, I know a lot of work and time went into, all these considerations that you just walked us through. I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to explain it so easily to us. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you.
Tá aqui bem pronta da.
Thanks, Megan. That was a great explanation of the orbit.
Faltando 10 minutos e 27 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Lançamento do foguete Falcon 9.
Oh my god, my heart is beating so fast. I'm so excited.
Já está quase pronto para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Já está quase pronto mesmo, gente.
Okay, just distracted me.
We have one from Stardom Observatory on YouTube who asked,
Faltando 10 minutos e 1 segundo para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, gente. Foguete Falcon 9.
Hopefully very soon after separation,
Falcon
the team is going to be working through the night, and then we go through a commissioning period. So we'll take a few days to make sure everything is good, then we'll power on the instrument. So it's going to take a little while, but we hope that commissioning period will take about a month to 6 weeks, and then after that we'll be moving into the real science. But even during that commissioning period, we'll be getting some images too.
It'll be great to see those first images come in. So keep those questions coming using the hashtag AskNASA. And Farah, launch is just minutes away now. So tell us how much this moment means for you and your team.
We've been on this mission for about 3 years now. I saw the spacecraft grow from paper design to being built and tested. We shipped it then from BAE Systems in Boulder, Colorado, over to here, and now we've spent about 2 months here processing. We're getting ready for launch. It's really, really a big moment. And the team has gone through such difficult times with the fires recently in LA, COVID, right when we were designing the spacecraft. So I know everyone is extremely proud and really excited to be here today.
And where were your team while you were watching tonight?
So we have a lot of our team members in this building here at Vandenberg Space Force Base, looking at the data, participating in those polls. We have people at the SpaceX building, and we also have part of the team at JPL at the Mission Operations Center, because once we launch, they will be the ones taking over operations, and they'll be working there through the night, taking care of the spacecraft.
All right. Well, Farah, we are now under 9 minutes until liftoff of Spherex and Punch on a Falcon 9 rocket here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Now, let's head over to SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, where our team of NASA and SpaceX commentators will count us down to liftoff.
Faltando 8 minutos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, gente. Daqui a pouco eu deito o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, gente. E vamos dar 1 hora de live já, gente. Daqui a pouco, que já é 42 minutos e 17 segundos, gente. Gente, a fumaça, por causa do combustível, por causa do combustível, gente.
Engine chill at about T-7 minutes. Engine chill is where we flow a small amount of that liquid oxygen into the engine to prepare for full flow at the cryogenic temperatures that the Merlin engines will see.
Yeah, exactly. And after that, stage 1 will wrap up
Daqui a pouco, gente, para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9.
Oxygen loading will wrap up at T-3 minutes, and stage 2 at T-2 minutes before launch. And we are coming up on that T-7 minute mark that Mick mentioned. Stage 1 engine chill.
Vamos, gente, faltando 6 minutos e 55 segundos, gente, para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, gente. Tomara que não dê escrevo. Não vou mais repetir, gente, porque se eu repetir, pode ser que dê escrevo. Aí pode ser que dê escrevo, gente. Aí não vou mais falar nada. Não vou mais falar nada, não, gente. Vamos que vamos, gente. Daqui a pouco os computadores de bordo já vão controlar o foguete. Falcon 9. Daqui a pouco os computadores de bordo ligam o controle e começam a controlar o Falcon 9. Vamos aqui. Não.
Chopping spacecraft is 1 internal power and configured for launch.
Well, that's a good call out there too. That's Denton Gibson, Dr. Denton Gibson, again, NASA's launch manager, confirming that the spacecraft are on internal power. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Nick?
Yeah, Spherex and Punch on in battery power, getting ready for launch tonight. I'm sure Farah is sitting at the desk just excited for this milestone as the spacecraft are now getting ready for launch later this evening.
And so flying both Spherex and Punch on one rocket, I mean, it just saves money. It's a great opportunity.
It's very efficient to be able to take advantage of one rocket and the multiple.
Faltando 5 minutos e 21 segundos de pago o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9, levando a carga Spherex e Punch, gente.
And coming up, a couple things are going to be happening back to back. We have the transporter erector, which is also known as the TE or the strong back. It will start retracting away from the vehicle, and that's good call out there. We're pressurizing in preparation for that strong back retraction. Again, that's that transporter erector, that structure there on your screen right next to the vehicle. It provides propellants and electricity to the rocket until just before launch. And we will first begin to see the clamp arms, which are just below the fairing, begin to open up. Once those clamp arms are fully open, then the TE can
Foguete é logo da NASA, lá da... Agora que eu vi, gente, é logo da NASA e do...
And so we will
aí eu vou ter que estar... vou ter que estar... a carga.
But once again,
Só
once they are
logo
fully
que eu vi,
open, then the
gente,
TE can recline just about a couple degrees away from the
a logo
vehicle.
da NASA. Logo marca da NASA. Faltando 4 minutos e 2 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Daqui a pouco a gente...
Falcon 9 is healthy and we're tracking no issues heading into launch. To provide a final verification status for your team, NASA's go for launch.
Pede já deu uma caidinha para o lado, gente. Pede já deu uma caidinha aqui, gente. Pede.
And then we can start pressurizing the vehicles coming up here shortly, but propellant is still loading on the vehicles. We're coming up on T-minus 3 minutes, where liquid oxygen loading on stage 1 will complete here shortly.
Yeah, Jesse, as we said earlier, this is the third flight of this booster for the Falcon 9 rocket. Those brand new payload fairings that will be retrieved by Go Beyond downrange. Inside those fairings, as we just heard,
Logo, gente. 6 minutos e 1 segundo para o lançamento do Falcon 9. Já falei. Eu falei bem, gente. Eu caí de mesmo.
Again, a beautiful wide shot right there of the launch pad.
Daqui a pouco os computadores do bordo vai controlar a gente no foguete.
Two really cool missions again. Spherex will deploy
Foguete
first
Falcon
starting
9.
about 40 minutes after launch, and then Punch's 4 spacecraft will deploy about 10 minutes after that in 2 batches.
Vamos ter cada também, gente. É cutucada. 2 cutucadas, gente. Olha que bom, gente. 2
Next call out we're expecting again in less than 10 seconds. Stage 2 LOX loading is complete.
Vai subir. Boa noite. Tudo bom? 2 lançamentos hoje. 1 minuto para o lançamento. 1 minuto. Não, falei errado. 1 minuto não. 1 minuto e 45 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Daqui a pouco, gente.
Which means that propellant loading is now complete on
Falcon 9.
That means 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen.
Certeza aí que vai ter delay, né? Então, vamos ver se tá certo.
In work now, and you can see some of those white clouds on your screen. That is us venting out the liquid oxygen lines from the transporter erector, and when that cold gas meets that warmer ambient air, it turns into condensation, almost like what you see when you get condensation on a cold glass of water. We're coming up on T-minus 1 minute.
Computador do bordo já controlando o foguete até a portada controlando o foguete. Os computadores de bordo já estão controlando o foguete até a contagem.
LD is go for launch.
And there we hear the LD is go for launch, targeting a T0 at 8:10.
Go for launch. 31 segundos para o lançamento do foguete Falcon 9. Gente, uma câmera. Nossa, normalmente ainda não coloca câmera aí quando tá na contagem ainda. Ele só coloca depois quando é lançado. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ligando os motores do Falcon 9, partindo do Falcon 9. Partindo do Falcon 9, levando os telescópios. Vamos lá, gente. Deixa eu ver se a SpaceX já fez um corte para a live deles. Corte do lançamento. Porque normalmente a SpaceX é bem rápido de fazer o corte. Quando é lançado aí, ele já faz corte. Falei. Falei, gente. Falei, falado. Já fez o corte aqui. Vai chegar até o limite, gente. Max Q. Daqui a pouco dentro Max Q. E
Max Q.
Right on time. And now we have a few events that are coming
Max Q já, gente. Já passou já. Já passou já, gente, a barreira. Vai dar um Max Q, vai ter uma cutucada, gente. Vai desligar os motores e vai dar cutucada, que é a famoso separação, gente. Famoso separation. Famoso separação.
That call out is second engine start 1 or SE1, and this burn will last about 6 minutes. After that, the boost back burn on the first stage to put it back on a trajectory towards landing zone 4, which again is back here at Vandenberg, just about 1,400 feet from where Falcon launched from in the first place.
Olha, gente, o fogo do Falcon 9. Olha lá, gente, o fogo do Falcon.
We have such a great live shot of it.
O fogo vai desligar os motores, gente, do Falcon 9. E desligou os motores. E vai dar uma cutucada, gente. Vai separar, gente. Deu cutucada. Cutucou o Falcon 9. Separação de estágio. Agora o segundo estágio, gente. Olha lá, gente. O primeiro estágio já indo embora. Já ligando o motor do segundo estágio. Logo daqui a pouco o Falcon 9, o primeiro estágio, vai religar os motores para diminuir a velocidade, para ele já conseguir pousar. Olha, gente, a cápsula, a coifa. Abriu a coifa já, gente. A coifa já abriu. A coifa já religou o primeiro estágio do Falcon 9. Isso já.
There you see on your screen and heard that call out that the boost back burn is concluding on the first stage vehicle. That's the first of 3 burns that it needs to make its way back down to Earth. This is the third flight for today's first stage.
Olá,
Previously
gente.
supported 2 other launches, NROL 126 in November of 2024 and Transport 12 just in January of this year.
Acho que vai dar
And You may have noticed some soot on the vehicle prior to launch. During the entry burn, which is coming up here in a couple minutes, Falcon 9 is decelerating by reigniting 3 of the 9 Merlin M1D engines. Now, this causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, or the plume, which deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle's surface. And that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. With each flight, the soot builds up just a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle, giving Falcon 9 its distinctive raised look.
We're just so lucky to have these great views. Again, we have a split screen here. On the left side is the first
Daqui a
stage.
pouco a gente vai um código mais da Space Flight no gente. Space Flight no de colocar aqui, gente, no sul. Esqueci de colocar aqui, gente, no sul. 81 que eu acabei esquecendo. E daqui a pouco vai ter um que eu busque. Vai religar os motores e vai pousar no estágio, claro. O segundo estágio é descartável. Descartável. Daqui a pouco, gente, a hora do pouso do primeiro estágio do Falcon 9.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, hello, we're in your bottom corner right there. I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and with me is Mick Woltman with NASA, and also Jesse Anderson, a senior production manager at SpaceX. Now, Mick is with NASA's Launch Services Program, which is managing today's launch. He's going to have a lot of interesting things to say to us to walk us through what we're seeing today. And of course, we have Jesse from SpaceX. Really great ride so far. We're so lucky to have you guys. LSP chose SpaceX to deliver Spherex and Punch to what's called a sun synchronous orbit 650 kilometers above the Earth.
Depois quase de 2 semanas ou uma semana só dando hold, adiamento dessa missão, a Spherex. Aí sim o foguete Falcon 9 conseguiu ser lançado, Vai dar o tempo, ele vai religar os motores. Vai ligar os motores, religa os motores para pousar o primeiro estágio. E vai pousar o primeiro estágio agora. Vai pousar. Vai pousar. Falando, vai pousar. E vai pousar o Falcon 9. E vai pousar. Cadê as imagens? Pousar. Então, está bem coisinha essa câmera daqui. Daí. E vai pousar. Cadê?
With some of the things we want, the spectral map of the universe will be incredible, and that solar wind and solar
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Flight termination is safe. Stage 1 and it sounds like stage 1 is on its way back. So that science is very important to us here on Earth. So we're looking forward to getting these deployed this evening.
You have the landing burn coming up here in a few seconds. That'll be a single engine burn and the last burn that the vehicle needs to land. There's that call out. The landing burn has begun. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 4E.
Vai, gente, religa os motores de novo. Vai pousar. E pousou. Pousou. Boa. E pousou o Falcon 9.
Confirming the third landing for this booster.
We had applause here on the factory room floor. It's a fun place to see. You know, it would have been cool to see it at Vandenberg, but this was pretty cool too.
Yeah, I was going to say I love the launches.
Imagens do segundo estágio.
It's one of my favorite parts, as many times as we've seen it.
And right there on the screen, we lost the signal for a second, but basically we're keeping an eye on the second stage's first burn. That's continuing, and that burn's going to last until just after T plus 8 minutes. And then it will shut down. There will be a coast phase, and then we will relight a second time. All right, so again, first burn out of the way. We will see a second burn later. That's going to happen around T plus 39 minutes. We hope that you stay with us to see the deployment of both Spherex and Punch. But for now, we're going to send it back to Raquel and Farah, because I know Farah is probably cheering right now.
Absolutely.
You are correct. Absolutely. If you're just joining us, I'm Naturalist Raquel Villanueva, joined by Farah Alabay, bringing you live launch coverage from Vandenberg Space Force Base along the central coast of California. And just over 9 minutes ago at 8:10 p.m. Pacific time, we watched as a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket lifted off. And Farah, I think that is the happiest you've ever been, and I've known you
to get through separation. But oh my gosh, being in this building, everything was shaking. But Mick will be jealous because really that sonic boom as it was landing, it caught me by surprise. It was very loud.
shook the entire building we were in right now. How does it feel now to have it off the ground?
We still have, a good 30 minutes to go before we separate, so we still have to hold on to that. But it feels really great to have Spherex in space. We saw a peak at the
Deu tudo certo hoje.
separated, and I think it was only one piece. So we're going to
Estou publicando aqui, gente, uns shorts.
Flying to important state. One is
desse lançamento.
That will create the most colorful 3D map of the cosmos and Punch, 4 small satellites that will study how the sun's outer atmosphere turns into the solar wind that fills our solar system. So I have a little pop quiz for you, Farah. Do you know what each of those missions stand for? Let's start with yours.
Spherex is the spectrophotometer for the history of the universe, epoch of reionization, and ISIS. Oh my gosh, I'm ISIS Explorer.
You got it. And now how about Punch?
It's the polarimeter to unify the corona and the heliosphere. That one's easy.
Great. That was an A+ for you there. Before its journey in space, Spherex had to go comprehensive testing. Farah was there for the whole process and will give us a behind-the-scenes look.
This is a clean room where Spherex is being built and tested. We call Spherex our small but mighty mission because it has some really ambitious science goals. The first is that we're trying to look back in time to see what happened in the first second after the Big Bang. We also want to understand how galaxies have evolved throughout history. And finally, we're looking for water and other basic ingredients for life in the places where stars and planets are forming.
BAE Systems partnered with JPL in the design and development of Spherex. BAE Systems was responsible for the integration and test of the spacecraft bus, which is everything below this metal ring you see around the center of the observatory. In addition, BAE Systems built the telescope that's at the center of the Spherex observatory.
The Spherex Observatory is really 2 pieces. There's the bottom part that we call the spacecraft, and that's really the guts of the whole thing. It has the computer, the telecom system, the control system, the solar array on the backside, and then the top part is the payload. The payload consists of the telescope itself, that takes the images.
The telescope is part of how Spherex will observe the entire night sky.
And then these cones are thermal shields that help us keep the telescope.
Gente, a animação desse
telescope and the detectors
deve ser
are
uma
required to be very temperature stable during their observations in order to collect that science data.
Estou programando aqui, gente, uns shorts dessa live de
So our spacecraft is built in a clean room, but we can't do all of our testing in there. We actually have different facilities that help us mimic the different environments that the spacecraft is going to see in space. The first facility that we get to when we come out of our clean room is the thermal vacuum chamber. Here at BAE, it's called Titan. It's a special chamber where we can lock in the spacecraft, pull out the atmosphere, and mimic the vacuum of space. It also can mimic the hot and the cold of space. So if you can imagine when Spherex is on orbit around Earth, it's going to see the sun, but also eclipses. So it gets pretty hot and really cold. And we can mimic all of that in that special chamber.
Você já publicar aqui, gente, shorts.
Beyond the curtain are 3 more facilities.
Os shorts do lançamento
That's where we do our acoustics testing.
Dessa missão.
Party for the spacecraft. We surround the spacecraft with these giant speaker stacks. And we blast sound at it, the same sound that it's going to see.
be when it launches into space. Behind it is the vibration lab. That's a special table where we bolt down the spacecraft and shake it in all sorts of different directions, mimicking the shaking that it's going to go through when it's launching on that rocket. And then there's the electromagnetic interference and compatibility test. It's a really quiet room that absorbs all the sound. We put the spacecraft in there and make sure that all of its components, they all emit radio frequencies. We make sure that they can all live in the same environment and they don't interact with each other in a weird way. There's one last test that happens here in the clean room, and it's called the separation shock test. What we do there is that we take the spacecraft and we mount it to the payload adapter ring. We then lift up the whole stack and mimic the separation that happens between the rocket and the spacecraft. When that happens, there's this big shock event, so we want to make sure that the spacecraft survives that and also that all the pieces fit together.
Years of hard work really paying off tonight, and this moment is so meaningful
CANAL
for the
pega aí,
Spherex team
recebe
and the
mesmo isso.
institution of JPL. This year
Esse
began with devastating wildfires
flight
across the
no.
Los Angeles area, including the
É cego mesmo isso, gente. Cadê? Não. Não pode ser. Não pode ser. Scrub. Deu um scrub. Deu um scrub do foguete da Starlink. Esse é mesmo que se deu scrub. Ainda não. Ainda não. Aí daqui nos dois flight não já está aqui como que está, como se estivesse com 48 minutos de live. Não, 48 minutos, não. Meia-noite e 48 pagam
Once again, if you're just joining us, we
Starlink.
made the determination that they have
Por favor, SpaceX, por favor, SpaceX. Tomar que não descrub.
mission for tonight. So we're going to focus our primary energy on the mission that is still in progress, the launch of NASA's Spherex and Punch missions.
Foi se der scrub.
Taking a live look now in
Mano, eu acho que deu scrub.
mission control there.
Já falei. Eu falei. Scrub do Starlink. Adiamento. Adiamento de te dar Starlink. Bom. Mas hoje tivemos o lançamento do foguete. Mas hoje tivemos o lançamento do foguete.
A whole host of delays. Now currently T plus 17 minutes, now 18 minutes and counting. The next milestone that we're looking for once again is coming up at T plus 39 minutes and 28 seconds. And there will be a roughly 40-second burn of the upper stage engine, setting up the Spherex spacecraft to be deployed at T plus 41 minutes and 56 seconds.
Não, eu coloquei duas vezes aqui, gente, o negócio aqui. Infelizmente, gente, da Starlink teve scrub, gente. Mas, espera aí, gente, e a danada ainda está em live aqui.
Nerve center for operating Spherex. All of the telemetry that comes from the space vehicle will arrive here. All the commands that we send to the space vehicle will originate here. On launch day, I'm up at Vandenberg Space Force Base and part of the countdown and the launch management team. One of the key roles in this room we call the
Let's
mission
see.
operations manager.
Assist.
That's one of the people that I will poll during the countdown. Another key person is my deputy, the deputy project manager. Since I will be at Vandenberg when all the action is going on down here, she will function as the project manager in this room. Another one of the key people is Varjan, and he'll be sitting at the other end of this room.
Great, thank you so much, Jim. We'll actually go catch up with him and find out what he's doing. Varjan, tell us the role of the flight director.
Well, the flight director puts together a procedure of all the critical events that happen to make sure that the spacecraft is healthy, that the instrument is healthy.
Use space select. Use space today. Focus of lançamento.
Absolutely. So then after that, we have all.
Recebi aqui só comunicar os space today.
Mas aí você ainda tem, por exemplo, aqui no Brasil, você ainda, por exemplo, você faz uma pós, você faz um mestrado, você faz um doutorado, aí você vai ver um concurso da agência espacial do seu país, o doutor lá vai ganhar 10 mil. Aí você olha, fala, não, pô, 10 mil, um doutor. Aí você olha quanto ganha um cara que fez ensino médio técnico e trabalha, por exemplo, no Senado Federal. Esse cara tira 30 mil. Brasil!
Essa missão Spherex é de quem?
E respondendo a pergunta...
A missão Spherex.
O Falcon 9 para lançar para Marte. O Falcon 9 tem
Eu sou
capacidade para
copiar a
lançar 4
empresa da
toneladas para
Spherex.
Marte.
Da Spherex, eu não sei qual que é a
Grande
empresa.
teacher, tudo bom, teacher? Good night. Tô aqui nos Estados Unidos gastando meu inglês. Ai, ai.
E outra coisa, que não é nem bolsa do...
Just like today's mission. In fact, the last month was the 10th anniversary of the very first mission, Falcon 9 and SpaceX launched for NASA, the Discover Space Weather mission, which launched in February of 2015, which you can see there on your screen. Since first taking flight in 2010, Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have completed more than 450 launches and more than 380 reflights. As first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight, Falcon 9 has helped drive down launch costs while increasing flight cadence, making space more accessible for all types of missions. Falcon is helping NASA build our future in space through contracts like the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative and agreements like the one behind today's mission, the NASA Launch Services 2 contract. SpaceX is enabling access to space at a cost and cadence that no other vehicle flying today can match, unlocking a wide array of new government, commercial, and scientific opportunities in space. Before Falcon 9 launching to space was infrequent and cost much more than it does today. Lowering the cost of access to space is the foundation for humanity's next steps into the solar system. More launches accelerate development, enabling more small satellite and private research customers to launch their work to space, which in turn helps stimulate the wider space economy here on Earth. In serving both cargo and human spaceflight missions, Dragon has visited the International Space Station 45 times.
Deixa eu só fazer, gente. Deixa eu atualizar o título da live e a thumbnail, gente. Era para ser 2 lançamentos hoje. Mas só que foi adiado da Starlink.
All this to say, reusability is the key innovation that is making space more accessible. Now, we are T plus 23 minutes into today's mission, and in a few minutes, in about 15 minutes or so, we will be reigniting that second stage to continue the journey with Spherex and Punch.
Felizmente, pegamos o lançamento da Starlink hoje.
Thank you, Jesse. Punch, along with students from the
Amanhã vamos ter o lançamento da Q10.
solar observations to life. Their project, Solar Stones,
Eu acho que já foi.
into art. Let's
Eu
take a look
soltou
at
um
how we're
negócio.
connecting the past to modern science.
Acho que já soltou um negócio aqui, gente.
Sitting next to me here are
Gente, então, eu acho que eu já vou acabando a live por aqui, gente. Espero que você tenha gostado. E bora, gente, só colocando aqui na tela os próximos lançamentos. Os próximos lançamentos. Os próximos lançamentos. O de hoje do Falcon 9 já foi lançado. O amanhã, o famoso U-10, levando os astronautas para a Estação Espacial, em Kennedy Space Center. Esse do Falcon 9 que era para ser lançado hoje, mas foi adiado. Esse do Falcon 9, já falei. Esse do Falcon 9, dia 14, às 7h56. Esse do dia 14, do Electro, da Rocket Lab, às 21h. Da China, às 1h10. 1 da madrugada e 10. Falcon 9, dia 15, às 3 da madrugada e 39. Esse da Rússia, que não tem permissão. Da Firefly, dia 15, às 10h25. E o resto aqui. Esse provavelmente não vai lançar nunca, esse da Glimmer. Vai lançar nunca da Glimmer. Esse. Vamos ver o da SpaceX aqui. SpaceX Avenirs, WORG. Esse mês, em março, era para ser lançado esse da New Player, Pathfinder Missão. Mas só que foi adiado para agosto. Foi adiado para agosto. E aí desse mês, aí desse ano tem para ser lançado esse da Escapade, esse de agosto da Pathfinder, Project Keeper 2005 ainda, Pathfinder Missão 2 ainda, Project Keeper 2 2005, outro da Project Keeper. Tudo da Project Keeper. Gente, eu acho que foi 11. Mas peraí, deixa eu só mostrar mais uma coisinha aqui. Vamos ver, gente. Rapidinho, gente. O mapa do satélite. Vamos ver se tem algum satélite. Tem um satélite. Esse satélite, o satélite Starlink. Starlink é 237. Passou em cima do Brasil. Fortaleza. Passou em cima de Fortaleza, em Pernambuco. Vamos ver também mais um do satélite da Starlink. Bom, aqui, atualmente, esse de Starlink, para quem não sabe, esses pontos amarelos verdes, esses que estão piscando, esses que estão reentrando dentro da Terra. É da OneWeb. Bem em cima do Brasil, reentrando também. Acho que é reentrando. E esse também, só dois que está reentrando. Tem da GPS, esse da GPS. Então, acho que essa foi a live de hoje. Espero que você tenha gostado, gente. E falou!